This is an anti-ballistic system, and the Freya missile, which can become one of our joint significant contributions to protecting lives, strengthening Europe, and enhancing Europe's global capabilities to prevent conflicts. You all see the threat that ballistics currently poses in Russia's war against Ukraine. It is the ballistic strikes that have become Russia's last resort, truly its final means to prolong this bloody war. Similarly, we see in the Middle East and the Gulf how much sorrow can be brought by ballistic strikes when ballistics are used simultaneously with mass drone strikes. Ukraine has been defending against this for years, and literally every day we need. Right now in Europe, there are few options for such protection against ballistics. First and foremost, these are the American Patriot systems and the missiles for them. France is developing its own updated system in this context. Together with Italy, there are also the IRIS-T systems, and we are grateful to Germany for the support with these systems. With the American systems, the difficulties are obvious. The production is currently, of course, being ramped up. There are not many of them. They are of high quality, but there are not many of them. And the President of America mentioned that in the coming years, this will significantly increase. However, America already needs to support the arsenals of its allies, protect itself, and protect its bases from strikes from Iran. And, of course, it's necessary to respond to what's happening in Europe in the war. Nevertheless, there are times in Ukraine when we don't have missiles to intercept ballistic missiles. That is a fact, and that is the truth. That's why we have started a new anti-ballistic program, which includes a coordination of political, governmental, and industrial dimensions, and which can provide mass anti-ballistic weapons, systems, and missiles. To them, we named this program Freya. Today, the first founding meeting of the Anti-Ballistic Coalition took place. I thank you, friends, for your support. It is important that there are representatives of European companies, those who produce critical components for defense systems. Thank you for being present today. Each of us is important, very important details, very important components. In Ukraine, we have a missile, but these are only parts of a system. Together, within the next 12 months, we can make this missile, this a system, preferably mass-produced, free, which will cover the shortage, be inexpensive, and at times allow the whole of Europe to equip itself with new anti-ballistic capabilities and provide protection to those in need worldwide.
We have indeed held in Paris a new meeting of the heads of state and government of the 37 countries that now make up the coalition of the willing. Moldova and North Macedonia have joined us, which is a good thing. 37 European countries. But I am not forgetting our Canadian friends, as well as our friends from the Indo-Pacific region, from Japan to Australia, by way of New Zealand. This meeting is the 16th since the first one we held in February 2025 in Paris and London, and is part of a new sequence, a new moment, which has made it possible to amplify and accelerate a dual dynamic. First, that of the military terrain. Since Ukraine has largely regained the initiative, it withstood this very difficult winter. It is reclaiming ground, and challenges and difficulties are mounting for Russia on the military and economic fronts. The second dynamic is that of negotiation, where factors are aligning to strengthen the chances of a robust peace. Indeed, in Evian, during the G7, we achieved convergence among European, Canadian, and American allies. We rebuilt unanimity at the European Council that followed in June, and this dynamic was confirmed at the NATO summit in Ankara last week. Both on the diagnosis, namely, to put it briefly, that time is not on Russia's side and that it cannot hope to achieve its objectives, and on the consequences that must be drawn, to impose an end to the fighting and relaunch negotiations. This new moment leads us, with today's mobilization, to several guiding principles that I wanted to return to. First, we are determined to continue consolidating our unity among allies to converge toward a ceasefire and a just and lasting peace. Second, to do so, we are also determined to continue supporting Ukraine today, even faster and stronger. And this summit, this coalition, has been a moment of acceleration and implementation of commitments made during recent months. This is true of the financial support that was agreed upon with a European loan of 90 billion euros, joined by the United Kingdom. And I thank the Prime Minister for the commitments made in Ankara of 70 billion euros, with the first disbursements that have just taken place. This is also true of military support, and it is in this spirit that we agreed, in the early afternoon at 12 p.m., with President Zelensky, on a roadmap between our two countries implementing what had been agreed in principle last November for our bilateral cooperation on air defense. On the one hand, with the acquisition by Ukraine of a first series of next-generation SAMP T batteries which complements the systems that will be delivered with their missiles in the coming weeks, and on the modernization of the Ukrainian fighter fleet. On the other hand, with the planned acquisition of 16 Rafale jets and the weapons system that accompanies them, the first of which are scheduled to fly in Ukrainian airspace as early as 2028 to 2029, with training to be held in the coming months. Radar systems are also being transferred, along with additional missiles, and we have agreed on licensing for new capabilities for Aster-30 and Scalp missiles, which will make it possible to produce these capabilities much faster with our Ukrainian friends and on Ukrainian soil. Several other, more confidential elements have also been agreed upon between our two countries. Ukraine has immediate needs, particularly in terms of anti-ballistic defense. This bilateral contribution plays a part in that. But at the initiative of President Zelensky, we brought together a new coalition a little earlier, the Anti-Ballistic Coalition, bringing together 8 countries in total. All of us were there with our industrial partners, which has indeed enabled and will continue to enable a very concrete acceleration of Ukraine's anti-ballistic defense. First, by continuing to provide Ukraine with the capabilities it needs to defend its skies, civilian populations, and critical infrastructure. Next, by authorizing the production of new capabilities under license, as President Trump has already announced regarding the production of interceptors for Patriot batteries. We have, as I was saying, decided to do so for the Aster missiles, which on the SAMP-T systems we are developing with Italy, and several others have decided on licensing in this regard, but also to pool our forces and expertise to develop new capabilities. This is the core of the Freya project, which, by aggregating the capability building blocks of our 8 countries and several of our industrialists, will make it possible to pool a common offering and accelerate Ukraine's protection in this area. In a context where Russia is seeing its economic vulnerabilities increase, notably due to the measures we have adopted so far, we are also determined to exploit them by stepping up the pressure we exert. And this is the third area on which we made progress today, through our sanctions and the fight against the shadow fleet. Our sanctions are what we are supporting with the 21st sanctions package for the European Union, which will target in particular the banking and financial sector, the military-industrial complex, and actors participating in any circumvention. And here too, I thank our British friends for their perfect coordination with the European Union. I also want to welcome in this regard the decisions recently taken by the U.S. administration, namely not to reinstate exemption regimes for fossil fuels coming from Russia, as well as those taken at the initiative of several U.S. senators to strengthen these U.S. sanctions. And permit me, at this moment, to pay tribute to the memory of Senator Lindsey Graham, who played an important role in recent years alongside Ukraine. Values that bind us in the transatlantic link.
We also have detailed plans that we agreed here in Paris in January for a wider package of robust and legally binding security guarantees. And look, we all know that we've faced challenges over the last 2 years. But the fact is we have overcome them together. We stand behind Ukraine today stronger than ever. We have increased our military support. Last week in Ankara, we announced 70 billion euros of military assistance for this year and for next year too. And I'm really pleased to announce today that the UK will participate in the EU €90 billion Ukraine support loan. This agreement will ensure that Ukraine continues to receive the military capabilities it needs most. It creates a new route for Ukraine to procure capabilities from UK industry, including ammunition, air defence systems and long-range missiles. And it sends a very powerful message about European unity. Because look, in recent weeks, the narrative has changed. We're seeing real momentum in Ukraine. All credit to Volodymyr and his people. Putin has finally been forced to admit that his illegal invasion is causing real problems for Russia. And I hope that will bring us closer to serious negotiations. But still, in the meantime, the killing goes on. We've just passed a grim milestone. There were more Ukrainian civilians casualties last month than at any time since Russia's ground offensive in April 2022. So we must double down. First, we need to do more to support Ukraine in the fight now. We have to do everything we can to ensure Ukraine has the air defences they need to prevent further senseless loss of life. And that includes speeding up production of air defence, gifting more from our stocks, and supporting Ukrainian innovation. Second, we must continue to ramp up pressure on Russia, including with going further on sanctions. And today, together with the EU, we've introduced our first joint cyber sanction package targeting Russian state actors and criminal networks that are responsible for malicious cyber activities. Third, we must continue supporting Volodymyr's efforts to secure a just and lasting peace. Even Putin has recognised that his demands for Ukraine to hand over Donetsk will not work, and that there was no agreement in Anchorage to that effect. So we need to support a better process now with some clear frameworks, including an immediate and complete ceasefire, the current line of contact as the starting point for negotiations, robust and legally binding security guarantees, compensation for Ukraine, and European participation in the process to safeguard our security interests. Fourth, now Putin is on the back foot, he will try to intimidate us once again, with more talk of escalation and hybrid attacks.
Der Kreml erzielt nun seinerseits.
For its part, the Kremlin is no longer making any significant territorial gains. It is becoming increasingly clear, and more Russian citizens must realize it. Moscow will not prevail in this war. Russia will not achieve its war aims. And we want to make use of these diplomatic and military developments of the past few days and weeks together. Volodymyr, we are backing the brave Ukrainians. We are also increasing the pressure on Russia with what we have discussed here today. We are not doing this to continue the war, but we are doing this to end the war as quickly as possible. Our message to Russia is therefore, it is time to come to the negotiating table. It is time to agree on a ceasefire. It is time to end the unnecessary bloodshed in Ukraine. Today we have made 5 agreements, which the previous speakers have already mentioned. I want to briefly summarize them once again. Agreements to make progress on the path to peace. First, we have reaffirmed our readiness to contribute to Ukraine's security even after a ceasefire. This is indispensable for a lasting peace. This requires robust monitoring. It requires credible, binding security guarantees and a permanently strong Ukraine capable of defending itself. The coalition of the willing wants to play an important role here in close cooperation with the United States of America. How we shape our security guarantees in detail will be decided by Ukraine and its partners, not Moscow.